the bottom of it. All wet, nice and dry.
That's pure dry.
Pure dry.
Yeah. So, what depth of thatch is there now, would you say, like, at present?
About 18 inches.
About 18 inches.
About 18 inches, yeah.
Yeah. How old is the house, do you know, Ed?
Done up in the 20s, the 1920s.
Yes.
It's been here since the 17th century sometime.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not in this form, like.
Oh, yes, yes.
Was that what you said last night? Was it that?
Huh?
You said how old the house was last night?
Oh yeah, yeah.
17? The family's been here since the mid-17s anyway.
Mid-17s, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cut some off the walls and the bottom, because like that when I walk from outside. They cut some off and plastered
Oh, yes.
outside, like, you know. The walls were much thicker.
Oh, they were much thicker.
Yes.
Oh, what there?
And they cut them about, must be the 1924, 25, like, you know.
And why did they cut the walls down like?
Well, it was too wide and I wanted to plaster it, like.
Oh, right, yeah, yeah.
And the rain was always running down on it.
Yeah, yeah. And did they take the cutting off the inside or the outside?
The outside.
Or the outside
Yeah.
only? The outside
The
only?
inside was straight, you see.
Oh, the inside was
outside
straight.
sloped back.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I sealed it inside as well.
Right, right, yeah. Are there some of the scraws?
There's some of the scrub.
Oh.
Yes,
And they just lay down. And then they put the skull at the back of them, just keep them down.
yes. They weren't tied onto
Down
that
there.
It's just a bare skin.
bare skin. No
No longer than
great,
that.
no great thickness at all. So there
No,
wasn't
no. They're reinforced by the old heather.
more reinforced by the old heather.
Yeah.
Oh, right, so they didn't need that amount of thickness, so.
No, look there. They're very, very good. You won't break them apart.
No.
They're really.
You can get you get them in rolls, long roll. Like,
Right, yeah. Oh, you would, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're really reinforced with the heather and the grass, and so that's why they're light. There's no weight on them. No weight on them. They're just strong. Look, even now after all these years, look.
Yeah, well, they're not, as long as they kept dry, they won't rot.
Yeah, look. See, they're really,
So this peat is
really strong.
So that's why they kept them thin, so they didn't need the weight.
No, didn't need the weight. They just
No
needed
weight.
the strength.
no way.
Just strength,
Yeah.
more than weight.
Yeah.
So that was a fine coat thatch on top of it to
It was,
insulate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you have any comment on that type of roof structure?
No, I think it's unique to this one.
Is it?
Yeah. The fact that there's no ridge beam or anything in it. It's just two lats. And the other end now is the opposite hand. If you look on the right, that one goes all the way up, and this one only goes part of the way. When you go to the other end of the house, it's the opposite hand. That's about the only difference.
You're wild looking for work today. Huh?
I haven't the strength to lift the brush.
Within earshot anyhow.
Cheers.
We're not putting a full script into this now, Ed. We're only putting in a few bits and pieces here now into this. And again,
No.
Huh?
No, Tim.
Oh, see.
here we see the original building of a thatched house that was probably built back in the 1750s, at the very latest the 1760s. It was owned by a man called Daniel Carmody, and he was married to a Dunn woman. It was we are fairly sure that it was built around the 1760s because a number of evictions that took place in other parts meant that the landlord moved some of his people and some of his workmen back into thatched houses, into dwellings like these along the edge of the bog. While we're speaking about this house, it's built of mud walls, and it probably sits on the site of the original house that was built about 1760. There is more than a probability, due to all the renovations and the rebuildings of houses that went on in the post-famine period, which was about, we'll say, the late 1850s to the 1860s, that this house was rebuilt then. The walls would have been maybe 2.5 to 3 feet thick at the bottom. They'd be well over 2 feet thick at the top. They were 7 feet high, and the walls were of a uniform equal height of 7 feet all around the perimeter walls. The wall plate on both sides rested on the wall plate that was on the wall plates on the gable. Now we see here as a kind of a crib roof which was up on this. Now it's of sawn timber, which is possibly red deal, maybe bits of pine. Here we see in detail how the hip gable was brought into it, and this was probably what was known in Old Irish as a branched hip gable, because again, if you take a look at it, the air trusses which form the roof, they support each other from either side. But once it comes to the gables, you can see that the branch trusses that are in on the gables are actually supporting the house at both ends of it. So it meant that the equilibrium of the weight of the thatch sat evenly. It was evenly distributed all over the whole house, and it made it that bit firm. We can notice as well maybe that even after 150 years in existence, that there is very little sag on either of the rafters. They all appear to be pretty well as they were put up, with the exception of 1 and 2 at the right hand end of it here, which those gable walls there would have been damaged during both the 1926 flood especially, and possibly in the 41 flood. The walls, as I said, were 7 feet high. There were it was a 3-roomed house with a central chimney. The chimney was entirely made of wood, which was wood right up to the where it passed out the thatch. You will notice that on the top of the wood, of course, there was always a coat of a lime mortar plaster. Now the inside of the wooden chimney was probably plastered with a cow dung lime mix, which was used in all the chimneys. Not alone did it fireproof the wood, but it generally sealed up the chimney. We can see here the way the throat was put in, just about maybe a foot and a half down from the top of the chimney as well, and that was there's a kind of a twist on the chimney, which means that it gives it a better draft and it takes the smoke up much better. Now the breast of that particular chimney is built up of fire brick, and of course there was a specific reason for that as well, is that the fire was up against something that was literally fireproof, and that fire brick was built up to a height of about 8, maybe 9 feet. Now one might ask as to why they went to that bother, and it was timbered up the rest of the ways. Even the chimney is timbered up at the back of it. But of course one has to know that the gudgeon for the crane which hung in the fireplace was sitting into those bricks, was built into those bricks, as well as there was a pot hanger there which rested across from the mantle tree, and it went into the back. It was there to hang pots, because heavy pots of material, of spuds and things were boiled at that stage. Now, it being the house of a small farmer, you could take it that there was a few cows there, and the cows were often fed with bits of boiled potatoes, and sometimes the turnips and mangels were boiled. The windows are in this particular house, the windows were uniform. There was 2 windows in the lower bedroom, 2 windows in the kitchen, and 2 windows in the upper bedroom, as well as there being two doors, one in the front and one in the back. Apparently the house was refurbished again during possibly the early 1920s, when the one of the owners came back from America and had the wide mud walls cut down and plastered with a lime plaster. We see there just along the bottom of the rafters there too, you can make out that there was extra fill veining done on the inside of the beams at that stage. That was done prior to putting on a matchwood roof on it, which improved the inside appearance of it there. The walls were 7 feet high. The rise again to the top of the roof was another 7 feet. The rafters are 10 feet. They are rafters which are 10 feet. Now there's no such thing as a pitch board on the top of it. The rafters were put up and held in place by all the scraw lats. Now the scraws were about the width between those rafters is about 3'9". There or thereabouts, it's very close to that. That was covered by 2 scraws. Now the scraw on the scraws were put up this way is that the first scraw was put up, which it went up about 8 feet, and the second scraw, which might be about 5 feet, finished over the top, and it went down to meet the other scraw that came up from 8 feet from the other side. Now the wall plates were within about the center of the wall there. Now that meant that the scraws actually sat on the modern wall of the house. Once the scraws were up, you can see there where the mud was backfilled in up to the bottom of up to the top of the bottom lat there. The thatching principally, apparently there was an elongated sheaf of rushes tied with a kye rope. Kye rope was a small rope that might be plentiful then. It comes from the husks of the coconut tree, but it was the only material that ropes were made out of in them days. Now the scraws were not tied with kye rope onto the lats. Apparently the scraws were sitting neatly onto the wall, and when they went up and they went over, the top scraw was supported because it hung to either side of the roof. Basically, it would appear that there were a number. The first coat of thatch would have been a Russia's thatch, because Russia's, of course, was available freely locally here. There seemed to be very little. There was a straw type of thatch on it in a number of places, which could be possibly a rye straw or maybe wheaten straw, which was grown locally. But the principal material that would have been used in thatching it would have been rushes. Now we have talked about the chimney. Once the scraws were up and it was thatched, you can see the way, I know there's already repairs done up there, but again the way the chimney was, the plaster was stretched out over the thatched to throw the roof off of it. Now the thing about this house was, I said at the start that there was a Daniel Carmody who was married to a Dunn woman there. Then came another grandfather Carmody, himself and his wife were there, and we had the next family that were there was Elizabeth Carmody, who was married to Morris Sullivan, who was an ex-RIC man. He was one of the men who actually was in the RIC mutiny, and he threw off his jackets and came home to join up with his Irish brothers during the fight for freedom. The other thing about that is that Elizabeth Carmody was an exceptional violin player, and she of course was taught by a wonderful violin teacher who lived just behind my back here. He was Patsy the Tailor Horrigan, and he lived in a thatched house just behind our back here. You see, when we talk about thatched houses here, we are talking about what we might know as the mountain. That's what everybody knew it as, was the bog mountain that was right here behind us. Now, in that bog mountain, there are about 650 acres of bog. And the other thing about it is that the landlords of the time must have seen to it that most of their tenants and their workers were plastered in bits of plots around that bog. because we do know from history sources that there were about 40 of such thatched houses, some bigger, maybe some smaller, on the precincts of that bog, which is about, we'll say, a square mile all around us here. I did say that Elizabeth Carmody, who was married to Morris Sullivan, was a beautiful violin player. Incidentally, there's one other thing about that Elizabeth Carmody, is that I remember to be working here about 25 years ago, and actually there was a song called The Boston Burglar on the radio, and she was a lovely old lady. She was sitting out here on a fine day amongst the flowers, and she said to me, Tim, she said, you know, I know the cell that convict was in that prison in Boston. I happened to be inside there when I was in America. So I said, that piece of information could certainly go, should be told anyhow. The other thing about that house, of course, is that the poet James Carmody was a member of that family. He too was living in Boston. And of course, it was James Carmody that wrote that lovely poem, Ennismore. Oh, Ennismore, oh, Ennismore, I see you in my dreams. The river's brick and gale that sprays you with its streams. The pine trees, the ash and oak, their beauty can't be beat. And you hold a mountain on your back that gives your people heat. They're lines from James Carmody's poem, Ennismore. We're looking here at Sean Browne, who was married to Elizabeth Hartnett. We are talking now, we are coming back because I'm going to name the generations in a minute. Here is Peggy Hartnett, who would be a sister of Elizabeth Hartnett, and this is Ed Browne Jr., whom we'll call him Ed Browne Jr. for the moment. Well, now, I spoke about Daniel Carmody and his wife, and I spoke about grandfather Carmody and his wife, and James Carmody and his wife. We're talking about 3 generations there. We have the generation here of Elizabeth Carmody. Now we have Sean Browne, who would be there. He'd be married to the 4th generation of Carmody, and that's his son Ed, who would be the 5th generation. And the unusual thing about these family is they had a great musical talent, and you know, all branches of that particular family, both the Carmodys and the Hartnetts, who was Elizabeth Hartnett was Sean Browne's wife, and Ed Browne's mother, they all have that musical talent. That musical talent spread to all the other Hartnett families who were relatives of theirs, and they are very accomplished musicians in several fields in music today, including, I'm sure, a few Flacchiol winners. We'll give it a rest, John, a bit of that now.
Tim.
I suppose while we are talking, you know, there is a saying that everything came out of the land. You know, once you're talking about especially the 18th centuries and the 19th centuries, that everything came out of the land. You see, the very walls of the house are mud, which was dug out of, I presume, a locality that was fairly close to us here. The wood was the only thing that was bought, and again, you will notice that all the wood on that roof is sawn. There is very little hacked timber. There are other situations where one would find hacked bogdale on the roof of those that timber making the roof. The thatch, which would certainly have come locally.
Okay.
Here we're looking at the construction of the hip gable over this particular room, which is the eastern wall. One can see that the air rafters, they're up there, and they come right over to within about 3 feet at the end of the house. Here we see what was known as a branched hip gable, whereby you see a central beam coming down sitting on the wall plate, and there are 2 side beams. They are fitted on to the 2 end beams that came up from both ends of the wall plate, which ran parallel with the front and the back of the house. Now, this principle was done to give to strengthen up the structure of the house, because you can see that the thrust of that heat gable meant that it strengthened up the whole structure of the roof from moving towards, we'll say, either gable, because it meant that when there was a great storm blowing, that it would put pressure on the roof of the house. And again, you can see that it was actually strengthened there from moving towards this gable when the storm was blowing in this direction, or moving vice versa to the other gable when it was blowing on the other direction. Now we see here that the air rafters were made up out of 4x2 timbers, and the cross piece there. Notice that there were no purlines or anything like that, just the air rafters, completely knit together by the lats which held the screws up. Those lats are about a foot apart, and they're about 2.5 inches by a good inch as sawn. The principle of that heat gable certainly has proved to the good, because that gable that we're looking at here is not the original gable, because during the 1926 flood, which washed this place with 4 to 5 feet of water high, it damaged that gable, but the roof timbers remained intact, whereas the walls had to be repaired. When the walls were cut down in the 1920s, they were plastered with a lime plaster, which kept the structure of the mud from crumbling away. We did see as well that they were the walls were fill beamed. When it was plastered, there was fill beaming put in right there in as far as it could go up, and matchwood ceiling generally made it all round a more comfortable and a more pleasant room to live in. Oh, that's just what we want there, right there. Chimney, the timbers are about 9 inches wide by about 1 inch. There is just a beam going up on either of the 4 inside corners there. And again, if you note here as well, you can see where the Coolagown lime plaster, which is still pretty white, because that was the unique feature about it, is that it often, it was its whiteness. You can see where it come right out through the boards to seal them, to make them smoke proof, and to increase the draft, but above all to keep them from going in fire. So those strips of white that we see there are actually strips of Coolagown plaster that was used in the construction of the chimney. And we can see here just above where the little purline is there, and that just above that there is a throat put into the chimney where the chimney is turning at an angle. That's in an effort to give a draft. We're looking there at the chimney tree as it was known then. That was to support, it supported the chimney because it went right across the width of the house, and at the back here, the breast of the chimney, so we see where the gudgeon was put into the breast of the chimney to hold the crane and the utensils which hung from the crane. In this particular building there was another beam of iron across here which had a hanger for to hang heavy pots over the fire. Some of one other local thatched house that was quite near here, they often, this particular one had no guard here by the side of this door. Some of the detached houses had a little guard here, and people often, it gave you less room maybe to sit around the fire. The unique thing about detached houses, of course, especially a house of this age, that all the cooking that was done was certainly done on the open fire. You had the oven for baking the bread, and which was, the griddle was often used to break the bread, which was sitting on a brand, and the skillet and the bigger pot was used to boil to cook food, and the bigger pot was used to do the boiling of potatoes and other such things. It was the only way, of course, what you had of getting a drop of hot water as well, was there was a huge pot of water boiling over the fire, which gave you hot water to wash the ware or to do your own bits of washing as well. Yeah, we're looking here at, of course, one might wonder what this particular selvage has to do in the wall, but one can see, of course, that the wall was much thicker. The walls here, when you heard me speaking about cutting the walls down and having them repaired, that is exactly pointing out. We can see here that there was about maybe a half foot removed from the wall, and the wall was plastered up neatly, which not alone did it improve the space area inside, but it also strengthened up the wall very much so. But the walls, as I said at the beginning, were very much thicker, but they were cut down and plastered with a lime plaster. That's it. Here we see the two jack rafters which go up from the end of the wall plate on either side of the house, and they go right up. The one thing unusual in these jack rafters in this particular house is that the one on the left hand side is going right up to the pitch of the roof above, whereas the one on the right hand side is probably falls about maybe a foot short. Now, if we were looking at the other hip gable from the outside, it's the opposite. It's made as if it were made like a bird's cage, that it could sit, that the distribution of the weight of the thatch roof was equally distributed. Here, of course, we see in detail where there was a selvage lift by having the wall plate in halfway in the wall. It meant, of course, that when the screws were brought down along the roof, it meant that they had plenty support there. It meant as well that the first couple of coats of thatch were actually supported on by the wall itself, and there were a few places where you found that the scallops were shoved into the mud there just to keep the thatch in place. The unique thing about this house, of course, was due to the construction of the roof, is that the only thing that was used to keep the screws in, especially on the both of the hip gables, were that there were shorter scallops used, punched in, just to lock the screw in place as well. That was unique here, because in some of the other thatched houses, especially stone wall thatched houses, you would find that the screws were kept in place by the wall plate might be much further out, and the screws were kept in place by being tied with either a rope made from hay or a rope made from straw, or, as I said earlier, maybe they were tied with a coy rope, which was the only available sort of tying that was available in them days.
Right.
Is that a cup of tea? Huh? Should I make it?
I have to go back to a building manual maybe to check some of the, but I know they called them jack rafters at the end. Yeah. You'll probably remember that.
I think I do anyway, like, you know.
Here we see a few strips of the coy rope mentioned. Coy rope, as I said at the earlier part of the video, was made from the husks of coconuts, which were possibly one of the only sources of making material for making ropes in those days. That's just 2 samples of that particular rope, which we know to be at least 150 years old, because it was used in the construction of the house, or putting the roof on the house. Here we see a piece of the hay rope which was used. That was just twisted hay, preferably coarse hay, with a lot of what was known as go looker on it. And again, that was just twisted with a small hand tool for twisting it maybe off the wine of hay or the reek of hay. And that was used to tie the scraws in a lot of the thatched houses. They were tied with that sort of rope. And here we see is a rush rope, which was, we're not quite sure, but we know that it was used on the construction of the top of the house, because there was sort of an elongated sheaf of rushes tied along the top of the ridge there. That, of course, would have been to make the passage of the scraw that laid across the top of it, so that the scraw wouldn't crack. Here we are looking at a section of the mud wall which was the back of the house, and we can see where the mud wall was cut down when the renovations were carried out during the 1920s. Also, one can see the section of a section of mud that was put in a single go there. It appears to be maybe 1.5 foot or thereabouts. We see here especially a very lime-rich plaster, probably with some cement added to it, used to coat the outside of the wall. And if we were to look up a little further, we can see the fill beaming that was done, or fill beaming to use the correct word, that was used inside to seal the inside of the top of the wall there again, when the insides of the house was repaired around the 1920s. Again, note all the holes in the structure of the wall, which were as a result of green rushes being mixed in with the mud, because the mud, when drawn, was a very, very rigid structure, and it had maybe to be mixed with water and puddled over. Sometimes they used a cow or something, or a donkey, to keep walking through it, to make it pliable in such a way that you could use it as a building material. And rushes were then added in, mixed in with it, so that they would stabilize it and keep it until it began to set hard, to dry out and to set hard. Another feature, I suppose, about the mud as well is that you'll find different colours of mud. The mud here, where it looks, was what we might have called a yellow mud, whereas again, if you come, you'll probably find in other sections of the house the mud was bluer. That because you had different muds in different localities, which were, or maybe if you got mud very, very near the bogs, you got a bluer mud. Then somewhere, if you were near arable ground, the mud that was there, especially underneath some of the mass structures, was a totally yellow mud. Construction of the mud walled house, of course, a gap had to be left for the windows, and once it had got up so high that they were roughly for the site, a ledge was put in and the building of the wall was continued. As you see, the walls were so low, the amount of wall that was over the ledge was quite small. And we can see, of course, this is not the original window that was in that house, because this window is a little smaller than the original window, because we can see where the mud wall is cut down here on either side, so there would have been a wider window there. Windows, these seem to have been a pretty big window in size for a mud wall thatched house, because on the law of averages, the windows were certainly much smaller. That's going back, I suppose, to the thinking of when there was literally a tax on windows, in the windows on the front of your house and the back of your house. But once the wall was taken up to the height of the window, the ledge was put in and they continued building. You can equally see that as well, of course, on this particular one, because the ledges are pieces of either 3x3 or 6x3, which go right in to the inside edge of it.
And the house is up there, the thatched house is the same. He said that they could have made alcoves in the wall, don't know, lying them, and it was like shelves, and there'd be great storage.
Yeah,
put
which he actually had one of those in. There was one of those in up in that room above. There was.
That's right. There was a small one in there.
There was a small one in there, yeah.
But you know, and I was saying they could put a big one in up there near the bedroom.
Could nearly put a built-in wardrobe into the whole thing.
Well, the coats when you come in and get wet, and that'd be handy to store.
Yeah, we might put. Here we're looking at Sean Browne. I said before he was married to Elizabeth Hartnett, whose mother was one of the Carmodys from this house, and we see here Peggy, whose mother was also a Carmody, and we see Ed Browne, that's the son of Sean Browne's. Now, looking at the structure that's standing behind us, which is 150, 160 years old at the very least, and dating back, I'd say, we'll say taking 5 generations back, we know very well that the original structure that was built here of a house dates back to the time shortly after Houston coming to Ennismore in 1735. Now, looking at the structure of the house that's stripped down here in front of us, today one might say that again one would put a new roof on it and repair the walls, and that we were back to square one again, that we were back maybe to another thatched house back in this site. Repeating history again, which maybe dates from 1760. But the nice thing about it, we believe, is that the possibility is that when this structure is demolished, that Ed Browne Jr. here, whom we are looking at on my right hand side, possibly will take out a new foundation and put in a structure that would take concrete walls and put a roof maybe not dissimilar to the roof that's on it at the moment, and put a new thatch roof up on it. So please God, maybe within the foreseeable future we will see, while this house has been demolished in 1998, maybe at the turn of the new millennium we will see a new thatched house on this site. And the thing about this house as well, I suppose I should have mentioned it earlier, there was a tradition as well which does bear standing up, that you know, the Irish people had a great devotion to Our Blessed Lady and to the Rosary, and there is a belief that the Rosary was said continuously for 1 century inside in this house, because the people who lived in it throughout the years had great devotion to Our Blessed Lady, and that tradition lived with that house as well, that the Rosary was said in an unbroken tradition for about a century. Now we hope coming into the new millennium that, as I say, a new house will be there, and that the people will be as generous and as nice and as heartwarming to visit as the people that have been there for the past 2.5 centuries. Thank you. Of course, while we look at them here as well, I suppose there was always a unique aspect to the atmosphere that was around the place, and that unique atmosphere was created by the fact that they always seemed to be great gardeners, and that there was always lovely flowers. We are looking at the remnants of beautiful lilies, and spirea, which is possibly 100 years old, is right here near me. The lovely multicoloured aquaba, which is a plant that's over here on my right hand side, and behind me stands the little pine trees. Now the other unique thing about this locality was that all the old people had a great love for trees, and the place was really sheltered. It was a real cosy mood, because surrounding this house was a belt of macrocarpa trees. The macrocarpas eventually grew too tall and they became dangerous to the house. But again, perhaps in the years that come we will see new macrocarpas or substitutes for them here. The other thing here as well, I suppose, is the bush on our left hand side, right in the front of us, is one of those rhododendron bushes, and rhododendrons of course grow profusely around here due to the acid nature of the soil. It, you know, the fact of the lovely flowers and shrubs gave it always an atmosphere. It added atmosphere to the house, and it made it a lovely place to visit.